When I had my first kid at 16, well, I was pregnant at 16, and then I had him when I was 17. I was still in high school, and I was doing okay, but I felt like I had to drop out of high school to be a mom. I didn't have to, but again, making decisions, that was the decision that I decided to go with, and I said I would get my GED, and I did get my GED a couple years later, but, you know, I had my own apartment, I was working, and then, you know, a little while after that, his dad started being, you know, controlling and abusive, and then I feel like I was stuck in that cycle right there for 13 years, actually, but it had just started, and it was back and forth, the mental abuse, the emotional abuse, the psychological abuse that came with that relationship. It was a lot. And I didn't really finally get tired of it until I was 28 years old, when I moved over 400 miles away to a whole different state that I had known nothing about, but that was my freedom from that relationship. And, you know, during that time, I went to college. I did, but I got really sick, and I ended up applying for Section 8 because I needed help. I didn't have no support. My mom was in prison. My grandma was, you know, she was working and busy. A lot of my relatives at that time was like, oh, you know, we got to go to work. We ain't got time for this. So, you know, I just was all over the place. And, but I kept a job. I did. I kept a job. But, you know, when you struggling like that, it's hard. It's really hard. And so, yeah, like I said, I ended up moving away. And I tried to leave him several times. Moved to a different city. I would end up always letting him come back. And he would ruin everything all over again. He would ruin it all over again. And so I moved around a few times, and I had my own place up until I was 22. I want to say 22, something like that. And then I had to have a major surgery, and I couldn't work. So I applied, and they approved me. And yeah, that was history, because I've been on it ever since. Because once I got on it, it was hard to get off. Like, it's nothing like paying regular rent, the mental part of it, especially, because it becomes a cycle. So even though your rent only $900, you know, you can't make more than, you know, a certain amount of money. So I was always trying to stay within what the rent was, so that it wouldn't increase, or I wouldn't lose the voucher, and not even knowing what I was doing to myself. Because like I said, at the time, I was just really, you know, it was overwhelming. The relationship, everything. And even though I ultimately got out of it, the trauma had already started. And now I had to heal from the trauma. And I didn't even know what it was I needed to heal from. You know, I didn't even know what was wrong until I actually started to pick the pieces apart and break it down and go back and all of that kind of stuff. And then, I'll make it up.